Is it okay for Christians to read other religious holy books?
Where America is in Bible prophecy.
Women becoming pastors and
Anointing homes and praying over homes.
Why would God have people tormented and burned for eternity?
What happened or where Jesus went after he died?
what is your opinion and what does the Bible say?
Welcome to Pastor's Perspective. We're here Monday through Friday taking your Bible questions. You can join the conversation with a question on end times, the Bible, or Christian living by calling 1-888-564-6173. That's 1-888-564-6173. By the way, you can also post your question and follow along at facebook.com/Pastor's Perspective. Here now is today's host.
Hello and welcome to Pastor's Perspective. Michael David in for Brian Perez. Call us now, 888-564-6173 if you have a question on the Bible, the Christian faith, or how to live the Christian life. Again, that number is 888-564-6173. On the program today, we have Pastor Brian Broderson. He's the pastor of Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa in Southern California. You hear him on the radio program called Back to Basics, and his website is backtobasicsradio.com. Also on the Bobby Cam, we have Dr. Bobby Conway from oneminuteapologist.com and Tony Clark. He is the pastor of Calvary Chapel, Newport News in Virginia. You hear him on the radio program called The Word Made Plain, and his website is calvarynn.church. Gentlemen, thank you for being on the program today.
Well, it is
Thank
great.
you.
It's great to be together and
Yes.
to see. You know, I have to say I was anticipating that I was going to walk into this room and Tony Clark was going to be sitting there across from me, but he's not here. Tony, what happened?
Not yet. I leave tomorrow.
Oh,
Yeah, I leave tomorrow to head your way.
okay.
Yes.
So that might happen next Tuesday.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
good. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that thought was in the back of my mind too. It's like, oh, maybe it's next week. So, but I'll see you Thursday morning because we're going to be gathering together for a pastor's breakfast.
Yes. That I'm really looking forward to that. That time to gather with the brothers and gather with. Oh, yes. I'm really looking forward to that time.
Yeah. At Reliance Church out in Temecula, I think.
Yes.
Is that where it is? Yeah.
Yeah. Temecula.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, cool. So any pastors tuning in, listening, come on out. I think, about 9 o'clock in the morning on this Thursday?
Yes. Yeah. I think it is 9 o'clock. It's at 8. I have to double check.
Well, I hope it's not at 8. I'm going to have to get up at 5 in order to get there. But maybe it is at 8. I'll check it out. Cool. So there you are, Bobby. You're back in the NC.
Yeah.
I am. I'm back in NC.
Yeah.
But I tell you, I don't really do the morning meetings too well.
I
all of
know
my
that.
creative juices.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of like with you on this. So I can start meeting at noon or after, typically.
Once in a while, this is a little inside story here. Once in a while, we would do pastors gatherings on Zoom for kind of our staff team, and sometimes Bobby would join us. And he was literally like rolling around in his bed, and it was just like, can you at least get out of bed, for one of these things? So.
I was so glad when Pastor Brian finally canceled that meeting.
Well, it just got a little bit embarrassing having one of the guys in the bed. So.
Right.
So, speaking of North Carolina, Bobby, today I had a really great little Zoom kind of an encouragement meeting with a church staff in Fayetteville, North Carolina. And it was really sweet. Just spent a little bit of time with those guys and encouraged them a bit. So, that was cool.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, we're looking forward to getting you out to North Carolina, that's for sure.
Yes. I'm looking forward to coming one of these days. So. I got to come back to Virginia too, man. I haven't been to Virginia in a long time. I think the last time I was at your church, Tony, I think it was the 10-year anniversary that I came. And remember that crazy, that guy, that sniper guy was killing people all around?
Yes, in D.C., yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I remember that.
That was nuts.
Wow. And now we are about to come up on 27 years. So,
yeah.
I mean, that goes to show how long ago that was.
Jeez. Yeah, crazy. Wow. So, but the big question is, how's Michael David doing?
I'm great. In fact, I wanted to share with you a Facebook question, actually. Yes, actually, because I want to get you guys' feedback on this. This one comes from South Africa. You can send your Facebook questions to us on facebook.com/Pastor's Perspective, but we do prefer to hear the sound of your voice, so call it at 888-564-6173. This one comes from South Africa, and she says, I am doing a course at church about hearing God's voice, and the person presenting said that when we pray for healing or something where we need God to intervene, we should not pray, "Thy will be done." We should pray in authority, is how he put it. I was brought up that Jesus prayed, "Thy will be done." They said when he prayed that, it was because the crucifixion was God's will, and Jesus knew that. This made sense to me at the time, but now I'm still uncomfortable with the idea of not in some way saying, Lord, I trust you. There are different times and different types of prayer, or is this just my uncomfort, or is there a reason for my uncomfort when saying that? I'll start with you, Brian, on that one.
Yeah, there's a reason, because you shouldn't say that. And I think that she senses that, and she's probably been taught that in her past, and that teaching was correct. Yes, that was specific to Jesus in the garden there, because he was on his way to the cross. But nevertheless, Paul the Apostle, he prayed for healing. He said, I sought the Lord 3 times, and the Lord said, my grace is sufficient for you. My strength is made perfect in weakness. In other words, God said, I'm not going to heal you. We don't command God to do anything. And this is this is like the prosperity teaching. This is that word of faith type of doctrine that has this idea that we command God. There's a passage in I think in Isaiah where the Lord is speaking, and he says, command, the King James, command ye me. God, in other words, God is saying, ask me this and I'll tell you. But these word faith people have taken that and said, see right here, God tells us to command him to do stuff. Newsflash, we're not in charge. God's in charge. So.
Now, Pastor Tony, do you ever run into that with people who say, I command you, commanding God to do things? I mean, have you heard that before?
Oh, yes. I mean, Solomon said there's nothing new under the sun. And so we've heard this. We've been around, Pastor Brian and I, we've been around the block with folks with this kind of stuff all the time. And you're right. It's part of the prosperity doctrine. We can name and claim things. We can command God. And what happens is that God ends up becoming the servant and we become the God because we're commanding him to do a certain thing. 1 John 5:14 said, this is the confidence that we have in him. If we ask anything according to his will, he hears us. And if we know that he hears us, we know we can have the petition by which we've asked of him. So his will is contained in his word. And so we can pray his word, yes, because that's where his will is. But about us commanding and demanding, Pastor Brian said, we're not in charge.
All right. Very good. Very good. Thank you for that question, Chantel from South Africa. One more Facebook question. I'm going to send this one to Bobby Conway on this one. This is coming from Ed. He says, I am in college, and it really bothers me how when studying religions, I can't make absolute comments about the Bible, Jesus, and salvation. Also, it is very uncomfortable to hear how everyone gets all excited about how every God they teach about, and those gods are absolutely real and right on, but Jesus isn't. How should I continue without getting bothered by this? I'm struggling. Dr. Bobby, what would you say?
It is discouraging. I can understand that. And I feel for kids who are Christians and they're in college settings and they could ascribe to any beliefs, it seems, and they would be considered credible. But the moment we bring up Jesus, it's a problem. And if anything, I would just say stay secure in your belief. Take the opportunity to go through school and study as well as you can. Like, for example, a professor should never punish a student for having a different set of beliefs. So I could see myself very comfortably teaching in a university, and somebody could turn in a paper, and that paper could be on Islam, and it could be a Muslim writing it. And I could see how I could give a student an A because I would be asking the questions, is this historically reliable? Is this true according to what Muslims believe? Is this free of a lot of grammatical issues? Is it true to what was talked about in the syllabus? And I think that's important. But what these kids often face today is they're getting penalized for being Christians. And that shouldn't be the case. A Christian should be able to do the same thing, argue his case, and most teachers, I would say, are hopefully going to be in a position where they'll allow for that to still happen. But when it doesn't, then you just got to be a little more stealthy and figure out how to get through that course and just be as informed as you can. I think that we can learn a lot in those settings. I think that we can learn about other beliefs. We can learn about other mindsets. We can try to get the perspective of the teacher ahead of time, like, hey, as long as I do my paper according to, good grammar and I have good citations, if I'm arguing what Christians actually believe and being true to that, would I be penalized on my paper? And maybe find out in advance if that's the case. But this is just the fact of the matter of where we are.
All right. Very good answer, Dr. Bobby and Pastor Brian and Pastor Tony. Thank you, Ed and Chantel, for your questions on Facebook.com/Pastor's Perspective. Let's go to the phones. Again, you can call us at 888-564-6173. We're going to start off in Pastor Tony's neck of the woods in Virginia with Stephanie. Stephanie, welcome to the program.
Hi. Thanks for taking my call. I wasn't expecting that I was going to be the first caller, but thanks for taking my call. Also, I just want to say thank you so much for this ministry. My husband and I, we love listening to it every evening. Pastor Tony, we've been to your church before. We're not in your part of Virginia. We're in Northern Virginia, but my grandparents used to live in Hampton, so we would visit Calvary Chapel Newport News often, and we like listening to your teaching.
Well, God bless you. God bless you. You have to come back and see where we are now, the new facility, because it's just incredible. You got to come see it.
Yes. No, we have not been to that one, but whenever if we ever end up in that part of Virginia, we're definitely going to check it out.
I hope so.
So my question was, my husband and I, we have differing personal convictions on alcohol. It's kind of, always been this way. So, before we got married and premarital, this was kind of a big topic for us to come to a compromise on. And we were comfortable with the compromise we came to. We set boundaries, and it worked out well. But, now we have a 1-year-old, and, Lord willing, we'll have other kids. And for me, I just sort of think to myself, okay, well, how does that work? Having kids when husband and wife don't necessarily see eye to eye on personal convictions like alcohol. And so I just kind of wanted to get your perspective on that.
All right. Let's start with Pastor Tony on that one.
It's funny you start with me because I have a very strong conviction when it comes to Christians and alcohol. I just think for me personally, you have to look at the children and whether you're going to stumble your children with your liberty to drink alcohol. Will your kids grow up drinking because they had to push past the wine bottles and beer cans to get to the milk for cereal? And kids going to be kids. They're going to sip. They're going to try it out. Daddy's doing it or mommy's doing it or whatever. And I just think that, you just don't want to stumble your children. And on top of that, if it is the husband, it's obvious that he's stumbling you because you got a problem with it. So for me, there are a trillion other beverages that can be drank. There's about a trillion different Coke products and Pepsi products. And you just don't, as Christians, you just don't have to drink alcohol. You just don't. You got some Gatorade. I drank Gatorade today. You just don't have to drink alcohol if it's going to cause someone to stumble. And I know the whole thing about drunkenness and drinking and all that, and people yell about that all the time. But in your home, here's the thing. If it's your husband, he's kind of stumbling you. And then now you're concerned about the kids growing up. And I would just say, for the sake of your family, for the sake of the children, I will abstain from alcohol. If it was me in your home, that's just my opinion. And folks yell about this all the time.
All right, Pastor Brian, did you want to say something about that?
Well, I want to hear Bobby comment on that too, because Bobby's got his own personal convictions due to personal experiences. So weigh in on it, Bobby, and then I'll wrap it up.
Well, I mean, one of the things that I love about this program is it should be a place where our various convictions can come to the table. And so I love Tony like crazy. I mean, like I wake up this morning and I have a text from Tony saying, I hope you had an amazing Memorial Day weekend. And I texted back and said, I did. I can't wait to be on the radio with you later. So all that to say, I think Tony's a little crazy on this, but I love my brother. Now, here's the thing. I really do respect what he's saying because he just wants to protect the kids from turning out like someone like me as an alcoholic. I happen to be, a recovering alcoholic. I can't drink, but my wife still drinks wine. And my daughter's 22, and my daughter will now drink. And I watch the way they are, and it's really it feels really moderate. Now, my son, he doesn't really even have a desire to drink, and he's 20. So my perspective is I think that we just teach our kids the dangers of it, because someday they're going to be adults. They're going to have to know what self-control looks like in their own life. And I can see that there's value when mom and dad model self-control with drinking. But here's the deal. I don't think you can help the alcoholic to not be an alcoholic. Like, I don't think people could have modeled a way for me to drink properly. I think that I've got the addict brain. And I am that way with everything. I'm obsessive. And so I think that a mom and dad could look at their kids, and if you see that your kids have obsessive tendencies, give real strong warnings about that, but also be aware if you're just manipulating the process so that you can keep drinking. I mean, this is an area that's really easy to deceive ourselves. I think that we're probably more attached to alcohol than we realize, even when we say we're being moderate. And so I think just being as honest as possible. But the Bible doesn't condemn it. And I think that in the biblical times, they absolutely would have drank in front of their kids. That would have been part of what would be going on. Nevertheless, I think that Tony's conviction is the wisest from this standpoint. You never have to worry about there being a problem if you follow his advice. Mine's a little more risky, but I think Tony would be able to as well say, yeah, Bobby's not advising in an unbiblical way. Mine's a little bit more risky, but it has a little more freedoms. Tony's is a little less freedom, but it's probably the wisest choice because you don't have to worry about getting burned.
Right.
Well, let me just say this. And on top of that, if you teach your kids about the danger of alcohol, then a kid will turn around and say, then mommy or daddy, then why do you do it? If you're warning me of the danger, then why are you doing this then? Where's the danger for you? So those are things, those are questions you have to ask. And in biblical times, it was 3 parts wine to 1 part. The Mishnah said it was 3 parts water to 1 part wine. So they didn't just drink straight alcohol like folks drink today. So there was and then sometimes it was 25 to 1 water to wine. When the wine became a paste, then it was 25-1. So no one drank straight alcohol but the barbarians. And so, yes, they did drink wine because they didn't have Coke and Pepsi and Gatorade and all those other things.
Yes, here we go. So anyway, there's all kinds of different opinions around this. I think the scripture. I push back a little bit back on that, Tony, because there is the warning against drunkenness. So obviously, the alcohol had the capacity to get you drunk. That's why the scripture says, do not be drunk with wine. So I think the diluting it down to basically just being kind of like water with a little bit of grape juice in it, I think that's not a reality.
Noah.
It's excess that the scripture condemns. And, I've had the experience in my life of traveling around the world, and I have met Christians on all different kinds of continents, different cultures. This approach to alcohol is, I have to say, it's predominantly an American view, and it's predominantly a fundamentalist view. And so and let me say this, I don't drink. So I'm not saying this to justify my behavior. I don't drink, but I do think that there is a way, and I've seen it in plenty of families all around the world. I think in America, American Christianity, I think we tend to make it such a big deal that it does become an issue where people are like, oh, well, and kids could even be like, well, maybe I want to take that because my parents said I couldn't or whatever. But when you're in a culture where it's just part of the natural experience of life, and it's not connected to drunkenness, it is just something that happens around meals and things like that. There isn't the stigma that comes along with it. So I think for me personally, I think the biblical position is clear that we are not to be drunk. We are not to be excessive. And so if you can drink in that manner, then fine. If you can't, like Bobby can't be moderate, so Bobby can't drink. Heather can be moderate, so Heather can drink. And I think those are the things. And I do think that you have to, because we're talking about your relationship with your husband, Stephanie, and I think that I don't think you can come down on one side or the other and say, I'm absolutely right, he's absolutely wrong, he's absolutely right, I'm absolutely wrong. I think this is something like you've already done. You're going to have to sort this out between yourselves, because I don't think the scripture forbids it. This is not a sin unless it rolls over into drunkenness, and that's where it becomes a sin, and that's where it can potentially become a problem. So.
All right, very good. Now, Stephanie, does your husband drink to excess sometimes, if you don't mind me asking that question?
No. Honestly, the thing is, I'm definitely aware that drinking alcohol is not a sin. It's something that I've chosen to walk away from for various reasons. And my husband, honestly, he drinks it very moderately, and we're talking a handful of times, special occasions each year. Then that's the compromise that we've come to. So it's not like he's like, well, I want to get a six pack every week just because, that's nice you feel that way. So absolutely not. And I respect the fact that he's even willing to compromise. It's more so, in my perspective, when you raise kids, you want to have a united front and a united perspective on things. I guess this is just kind of going to be a unique situation for us that we'll just have to, have the conversation whenever it comes up.
But let me just say this, Stephanie. I think, you have to do this about a bunch of things, right? I mean, you have to do this about entertainment. You have to do this about the things that you're going to allow your kids to be exposed to. And all of those things have, if you want to look at it this way, they all have positives and negatives. So, Disney Plus has all kinds of fun stuff on it. Once in a while, it has some weird stuff. So, the question is, do we just, we're not going to allow Disney Plus into our home, or we are going to make sure that we are selective and wise in our use of these things. So, and I think if we teach our kids I think they will grow up healthy in regard to these things.
Well, let me just say this quickly. We also have to put the caveat onto it that there were people who were forbidden from drinking alcohol in the Bible. The priests in Leviticus chapter 10, kings, Lemuel or Samuel in Proverbs 31, and also pastors in 1 Timothy 3. So there were those who were told not to drink alcoholic beverages. So there is a prohibition in the Bible for certain folks. And then I can take that to a certain extreme. But once again, people yell about this subject.
Yeah. But they were not forbidden strictly. Only the Nazarites were forbidden from drinking wine. The priests weren't forbidden from drinking wine. They were forbidden from drunkenness. And likewise with the pastors, it's, I think the translation, every translation with the exception of the King James Version, says basically the idea is being addicted to wine or lingering long at wine. And we know it had to be that because Paul says to Timothy, take a little wine for your oft infirmities.
And that's what I was going to say. That verse alone, when Paul told him that, it was obvious that Timothy was not drinking wine, that he had to tell him, drink a little bit for medicinal purposes. So it's obvious that Timothy was abstaining from alcohol totally.
But you can look at church history though and see that that alcohol has not been completely excluded. That's the thing. I mean, even like you think Thomas Aquinas, for example, here's some wise advice at the end of a hard day: take a shower, get a good night's sleep, and drink a nice glass of red wine. So I feel like this would be a little bit of a stretch if I'm just being honest myself on the alcohol side of things on the Bible. I don't think that if we were to go back and look at the early patristic fathers that we would see that they were abstaining from alcohol. You see even Joseph with his brothers when they drink, it says that they were merry with wine. I mean, like the wine had an effect of making them happy. So I know that this is and I feel kind of funny, like I'm the one here that's had my life completely jacked up at times with consequences because of alcohol. And yet I'm like, hey, I wish that I could come home at the end of a hard day and enjoy a glass of beer with my wife. It looks fantastic. I mean, and I know how great it tastes, but I just can't do it. But I think the thing is I know as an alcoholic, I know that there's something different about the way that I drank than so many people, the way it got in my head, and I can't impose my brokenness on everybody else.
Okay, we got 3 minutes. I'm going to read this verse really quickly.
Brian, straighten them out.
Yeah. Leviticus 10:9 says, do not drink wine or intoxicating drink, you nor your sons with you, when you go into the tabernacle of meeting, lest you die. It shall be a statute forever throughout your generations.
Yeah.
So
when you go into the tabernacle of meeting.
But it shall be a statute throughout your generation. So you try to take
because remember the context, Tony, those Nadab and Abihu were consumed by the fire of God because they offered the strange sacrifice. And there's some implication in what's said after that there was alcohol involved. But that had to do strictly with during the time that they were ministering the offerings in the tabernacle. So they didn't live in the tabernacle, so it wasn't like that was a rule for them at home. That was for when they were acting out the priestly role in the sacrifices.
Got 2 minutes, so I let it go. Right.
Hey, let me just say, thank you to Stephanie and her husband for allowing us to straighten Tony out. I'm sure that you're clear now.
And trust me, I have more where that came from.
I believe.
Hey, Thursday morning we'll have a duo, a duel, a duo. No, this is good because this is the way Christians are to disagree. We are to disagree on non-essential things in love and graciously and okay. I would never try to convince Tony against that conviction he has. That's his conviction. He needs to hold to that conviction, and unless God tells him otherwise, I would never mess with that. And so that's the way it should be.
All right, absolutely. Yep. Good conversation. We're going to come back in a little while, so call us 888-564-6173 if you want to join the program on Pastor's Perspective.
Pastor's Perspective continues in just a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back. Pastor's Perspective continues with your question to 1-888-564-6173. Here again is today's host.
Welcome back to the second half of Pastor's Perspective. 888-564-6173 is the number to call. Michael David in for Brian Perez. We have Brian Broderson, Tony Clark, and Dr. Bobby Conway on today's program. And I think, Dr. Bobby, you wanted to ask Brian something. Is that right? He froze.
What a time to freeze. Wow. And now,
okay.
Now he's
gone.
He'll be back.
He'll be back in the
There he is.
Is he back? Okay, you're back. Okay, go ahead, Bobby.
Yeah. Like, the timing couldn't have been more perfect on that one right there. I mean, my goodness. No, I know. I thought it would be helpful because, like, okay, Brian was a bit of a train wreck before the Lord got a hold of him. And I think that we would have been bad news together as kids, right? And so, but interestingly enough, it's kind of like, what do you think that is about, different personalities? Because even though you were a train wreck, if you decided you wanted a drink, I don't think you live with the fear that, you would sink into your past behavior. Like, you seem to have a self-control in that area, even though you had a party past. Mm-hmm. I have proven on a retry that it doesn't work. What do you think that is about your makeup? Did you ever feel like you were an alcoholic when you were younger, or?
No, I never did. And but the interesting thing is, I have a history of alcoholism in my family. And my dad's side of the family, my uncles, for example, my dad's brothers, all died of alcohol-related diseases. And so that was there within our family, within our genetics, in some senses. But, for me, I used to drink like anybody, and I would get wasted like a lot of people got wasted too. But, for me, when I came to Christ, I was just done. I was done with that. I couldn't care less if I ever had another drink again. It just I didn't have those kind of cravings or anything. Never have since then. So, yeah.
Wow.
But that's me. I mean, you're different. We're all different. So, yeah. That's been my experience.
No, that's a blessing. I appreciate you sharing that. And then, Tony, I know that you're a pothead. Maybe just share about. No, I'm just kidding.
No, it's funny because I was a athlete. I didn't want anything to hinder me from being the best that I could be. I never did smoke, drink, or do drugs. Never did.
Yeah.
Okay.
And never had a desire to do those things.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that's a testimony you don't hear all that often today.
That's right.
But when you hear it, you just think, wow, God bless you. Good for you.
Yes.
But I think, I look at my kids, and I think, that they never had those issues and stuff, and that's a blessing. Yeah.
All right. Good conversation. Good conversation here on Pastor's Perspective. 888-564-6173 is the number to call. We're going to go to Sterling, Colorado, and talk to Kate next. Kate, welcome to the program.
Thanks for taking my call. You guys are such a blessing to me.
Thank you.
I have two questions. One is on Ephesians 6:12, and the other one is on addictions. I've been listening to you talking about alcoholism, and with me, I struggle with food. I love to cook, and I'm a good cook, but I can't seem to stop eating. Well, if you can quit on alcohol, but you can't stop eating. So I'm trying to understand self-control, and I'm trying to understand Ephesians 6:12.
So Ephesians 6:12, for our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. Is that the passage you're thinking of, Kate?
Does it talk about principalities?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the principalities.
That's the one.
Yeah, the principalities are a reference to the evil spirits, the demonic forces that are behind the scenes and controlling a lot of what goes on in the world.
Okay, I came from a lot of childhood abuse, and I'm trying to understand this.
Are you trying to understand it in relation to the issue of food?
Well, I don't know, not really. I think it may tie in. But I don't understand it. I don't know where to go with it. I've been through many, many years of counseling and trauma therapy. I've gone through EMDR, lots and lots of work I've done on it.
Your past abuse, over your past abuse? Is that what you're referring to?
Both parents tried killing me.
Oh, that's...
So it wasn't any little thing. It was very traumatic for me.
So what?
There was sexual abuse and all kinds. They would horribly, horribly abuse me.
So what is the passage like? What's your question regarding the passage itself?
Well, I feel like, when I was reading it, and I've heard different people speak on it, that if if it's principalities, then we're not to look at human people. It's fallen angels that do this harm to us. And I'm just trying to understand, was it my parents or was it something demonic or what was it? It's definitely demonic.
Yeah. I see exactly what she's saying is that the childhood abuse and the things her parents, the heinous things her parents did to her, she's wondering if it's demonic. Ephesians 6:12 is talking about various rankings of angelic beings, demonic beings. And so, because Satan, according to John 10:10, he wants to steal, kill, and destroy. And just like God uses people in order to get his purposes across, Satan uses people to get his purposes across. And therefore, it was something demonic to make parents want to try to kill their child. That's from the pit of hell itself. Parents are supposed to protect their children, love their children, and for that to happen to you, that was something demonic.
Brian, did you want to say anything?
Well, I would like to just encourage Kate that, the beautiful thing that Paul is telling us here is that, he's just reminding us that our battle is not ultimately against human beings. It's not against flesh and blood. Yeah. And he tells us here to be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. He tells us to take up the whole armor of God that we may be able to stand and withstand in the evil day. And then he walks us through basically how to fight this fight and how to be victorious in it. And I would be happy Kate, to send you. I wrote a book on the subject of spiritual warfare where I went in depth into this particular passage, and I'd be happy to send you a copy if you would like that. And I think it would probably answer some questions and help you in regard to areas where you're just wondering, what this is about. So if you want to stay on the line, we'll get your address and we'll send you a copy of that.
All right. Yes, Kate, please stay on the line. The call screeners will be with you in just a moment, and you can learn about Brian's book, Spiritual Warfare. I believe you can get it backtobasicsradio.com, too.
You can order it there, backtobasicsradio.com. The book is called The Powers of Darkness and the People of God.
All right.
I remember when you wrote a pamphlet on that 30 years ago.
Yeah.
You remember the little pamphlets that you used to write? About 30 years ago on spiritual warfare.
And then, over the years, you just expand it, so it's grown over the years. And the crazy thing is that pamphlet, the contents of that pamphlet, Tony, Bobby got a hold of a tape of that very content at a time in his life when he was going off the rails, and God used it to really minister to him. And I had no idea that ever happened. And when we first met, he told me the story, and I was like, holy smokes, that's amazing. Wow.
And now I'm going to blow you away again. Somewhere around my house in my stash, I still have that pamphlet. I still have it.
Maybe you could put it on eBay and see what you could get.
Right.
Bobby, can you tell us the cliff notes of that story with Pastor Brian?
Yeah. So I was working at the Ritz-Carlton in Dana Point, and there was an elderly Christian lady that worked there. I was a new Christian, and there was a lot of crazy stuff going on in my life. I had dropped, 20 pounds plus. I was going to doctors trying to figure out what's going on. Doctor said, you have high blood pressure. I'm thinking, high blood pressure? I'm 21 years old. Why do I have high blood pressure? I had all kinds of weird emotions that I couldn't explain. I wasn't sleeping in the bedroom at night. I'd go out in the family room and turn the lights on. I was just tripped up a little bit. And this lady said, Bobby, I think you're going through what's called spiritual warfare. And I never heard of that. I didn't even know what that was. And I was curious, but the next week she came back to work and she said, Bobby, she said, this package showed up at my house. I never even ordered it. I believe God mailed it to my house for you. And it was a tape entitled Spiritual Warfare by Brian Broderson. She gave me the tape. I listened to it so much that Heather was in Arkansas. I was in California. I kept listening to it over and over. I practically memorized the sermon. It was the very tool that helped me to come out of that dark night. I would fly to Arkansas to see Heather, land at Little Rock Airport, could not wait for her to hear the tape. I plugged it into her tape cassette, and the tape got 8 on the spot. And I thought, well, it was just crazy. Well, you take all that and you fast forward. Well, little did I know that I would share that story with Pastor Brian 25 years later, and God would use that story to help knit our hearts together, and that I could be a partner with him on this radio show. It's just truly amazing. And then he helped me with spiritual warfare again a couple months ago. I was kind of back at my 21-year-old behavior. He saw it firsthand, and he straightened me out again. So he's pulled me out of this twice now.
Oh, wow. Wow. What a God story. Yeah. That's a God story.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right,
I love it.
Amazing.
I do too.
Amazing. Again, you can get that book, The Powers of Darkness and the People of God, at backtobasicsradio.com. This is Pastor's Perspective, 888. By the way, Kate in Sterling, Colorado, stay on the phone, and they will get your information and get that book out to you. Again, 888-564-6173 is the number to call. Brian Broderson, Dr. Bobby Conway, and Tony Clark are here. We're going to go to Sean in Long Beach. Sean, welcome to the program.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Uh-huh.
That was an awesome conversation, by the way. I love that. So I've always been taught that the 7 seals, trumpets, and bowls were all different events or sequential events. And then I started looking at, for example, seal 6, trumpet 6, and bowl 6, and they all seem to appear to be talking about the Battle of Armageddon. So if they were all kind of sequential events as the way they are told, wouldn't that be odd if, like, the 6th of each is the Battle of Armageddon? It seems that it's possible that all, like, seal 1, trumpet 1, bowl 1 are all the same event told from a different perspective. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I'll just jump in on this one real quick. The thing is, Sean, Revelation is difficult in getting the kind of the flow of things. And I listened to a teaching recently on the book of Revelation by a friend of mine, and he had a really great take on it. He said, not to think of it sequentially, but, and I had already drawn this conclusion myself from years of teaching it, but the way he put it, he said it's a number of windows. That you're looking through different windows into these events. And I think that there's a lot of truth to that. I've taught it like these are concentric circles that starting with the seals, but the seals contain the trumpets, and then the trumpets contain the bowls. And so it's almost like just a drilling. I see it as more of like a drilling down deeper into the events and giving more detail. It's kind of like Genesis 1 and 2. Genesis 1 gives you the overview of creation. Genesis 2 gives you the details of the creation on the 6th day. And so I think the seals give you the overview, because obviously when you get to the final seal or the 6th seal, you've got the stars falling from heaven and the mountains crumbling and people hiding in the dens of the earth, fall on us, save us from the wrath of the Lamb. You've got all of that climactic sort of a thing happening there. And then you move on into the trumpets. And so I don't think that happens. And then we got another cycle. We start over again. I think we're just now drilling down deeper and more specifically into the details that have, or the overview that's already been given. What do you think, Tony?
I'm listening because I've taught it just as it's given in Revelation, and I never really looked at it as far as just drilling down deeper. Mm-hmm. And so it's something for me to explore a little bit more. Because I've always had some ideas of how it does flow in the book of Revelation. But then again, listening to what you had to say, I said, let me look into this a little bit deeper. So it's something to explore.
Well, Bobby, got any thoughts on it?
I like the hermeneutical option that can be shared, because obviously I think a lot of times, especially dispensationalists, will unpack this to kind of be the seals, then the trumpets, and then the bowls. But then to our caller's question, when you start looking at the sixth event in each of these cycles and you see some of the continuity, you could ask, are these three separate events, or is it the one event happening and we're getting more detail on that? And I think that the way you brought out Genesis chapter 1 and 2 is a good hermeneutical approach. In other words, that same hermeneutical approach can be applied in different parts of God's scriptures. And so what we're getting at is we're wrestling through hermeneutically, how do we interpret God's word? And sometimes we can bump into these kinks, and I just love that there's different options for how we get at it. Now, from God's perspective, there's only one interpretation.
Yeah.
And the problem is, and I think that we need to say that. You'll get postmodernists kind of claiming, oh, there's many interpretations. Well, there's lots of human interpretations, but from God's perspective, there's one interpretation. And I concede that we come up with these different ideas, but there is one way to understand it. Yeah. I don't know that we always get there, and I think it requires some epistemic humility on our part. But I'm thankful that when we get in snags and we doubt things, if we're aware of some of these different models that we can overlay on difficult passages. Sometimes I think people have too wooden of models, and then they end up in doubts, and they don't realize if they had other models accessible to helping them to see how to interpret Scripture, that they could be freed up a lot. And I think that's a wonderful thing about the way you shared that.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, and I think that it goes along with exactly what you're saying. So like I mentioned, I just listened to a series on Revelation by a friend of mine who did an extraordinary job. He taught it from an all-millennial standpoint. Some of his application was absolutely amazing, stuff I'd never heard before, and thought, man, he nailed it. He just absolutely nailed it. Now, the overall understanding, I would disagree with him on it, because he's coming, from the all-mill position where I come from the pre-mill position. Yeah. But I think, here's my point. I think if we don't read other positions, then I do think we limit ourselves, because, other guys have insights on things that we don't have insights on, because we're not thinking in those terms. When I think it tends to be the case with dispensationalists, when you go through like a prophecy like Revelation, you're mostly concerned with the chronology, you're mostly concerned with the prophetic events and trying to figure out how this is going to happen, and you miss what could be like this amazing application for right now, because you're thinking of it purely future. And that's what I found. I thought, wow, I could take, if I could preach like him, but I couldn't. But just some of the stuff was so profound. It was so powerful. It was so relevant to the moment. But then when it got to, the issues about what the future looks like, it was like, well, that's where we parted ways, but not without me being blessed and benefited along the way,
That's good.
All right, good stuff. Well, Sean from Long Beach, thank you for your call here on Pastor's Perspective. Brian Broderson, Dr. Bobby Conway, and Tony Clark are here. And I did want to ask you, Bobby, did Heather ever hear Brian's message, even though it ate the tape recorder? Did she ever hear the message?
Yeah. I ended up getting another tape as well. I cannot tell you how many times I listened to that thing. It was just such a godsend. I'm so thankful for that message.
All right. I'm glad Heather got to hear it. Okay. I couldn't move any further without saying it. Now I want to go to Haley in Tampa, Florida. Haley, welcome to the program.
Yes, Haley.
Hey, you guys. I'm so glad to be here. I sure, honestly, if it's in God's will, one day I just want to have, Pastor's Perspective with Happy Haley. I can book you guys for, a whole hour and just pick your brains and, write down all this wisdom. So I'm just going to pray about that. You never know. Maybe, 20 years from now it could happen. But anyway, and by the way, the church, it didn't work out. Nobody had their Bibles. Nobody was actually studying it from it. That was a problem. So I'm going to this much tinier church where they actually teach hermeneutics. and like how to study the Bible and everything. So I'm really praying that this is where I'm supposed to be. So, yeah, I'm really hoping. But anyway, so one of my family members, it's like every time I go out somewhere to a store, they are stealing stuff, and it's really bothering me. And like the first 2 times I didn't really say anything about it because this person would be like what the Bible considers a fool. They are very quick to anger. They're very quick to speak, slow to listen, just very volatile. But then today when it happened, I was really super upset about it. And I told them straight up, I was just like, listen, I love you and I'm not condemning you, but I'm not comfortable being around you and going out with you if you're going to be doing these things. And they were like, well, just look the other way, just walk away while I'm doing it. And I'm thinking to myself, like, no, that's wrong. That's a sin. That's bad, you know? So I'm just like, Jesus sat with sinners, but he didn't sin with sinners. And I want to spend time with this person because I am very slowly being a good influence on them and showing them the love of Jesus. And I'm seeing very, very slow, small changes. But at the same time, it's like I also don't want to be hanging out with them too much if they're just going to be stealing and doing all of these things. So how do you walk that fine line? Because I don't want to be complicit in their behavior.
Good question. Pastor Brian, what would you say to that?
I would say that Pastor Tony and Pastor Bobby have to answer this question.
Okay, Tony, you go first on that one.
We only have 2 minutes to go, and right by now it's 1 minute, and he's the 1 minute apologist. So, Dr. Bobby, go for it. You got your 1 minute.
Hey, Haley, I apologize for their passivity. I know that I know that's got to be tough. But let me jump in here. I think that you definitely don't want to be with them while that stuff's going down. I mean, if people are going to be stealing and you're in their presence, that's a really uncomfortable place to be. If you're hanging out with friends and they're driving around and intoxicated, you don't want to do that. So yes, Jesus would hang out with people, but you have to hang out with people in a situation where you're not going to get busted and lose your witness as a result of hanging out with them because you're trying to be a witness. Yeah. So that's what I would say. And I think that Tony has to come in and say something to you because he's just being so passive. So Tony, you owe us a verse or something, baby. Come on.
No, you're right, Haley. You're asking the right question. Just don't be with them when they're sinning. You can be a light, and you can be the presence of Jesus around them without sinning. So definitely, You're doing the right thing.
All right. Well, thank you, Haley, for your call from Tampa, Florida. Thank you, Brian Broderson, Dr. Bobby Conway, and Pastor Tony Clark. Wonderful conversation today here on Pastor's Perspective. I'm Michael David in for Brian Perez. Call us again next week, tomorrow. We'll talk to you on Pastor's Perspective. Thank you for joining us. Good night. God bless.
Thanks for listening to Pastor's Perspective. We trust you've been blessed and had your question answered. Join us Monday through Friday and follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/pastorsperspective. The preceding was sponsored by Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa, California.